Okay, so now a final advanced lecture on consumers. It's all theoretical. It's not something we'll act upon right now, but it's good for you to know about. So this is your consumer group application, and you have 3 consumers in it. And you may have been wondering, how does a consumer group work? Like, how does everything get coordinated? So basically, each consumer is going to pull Kafka, and it's called a pull thread. And each consumer is also going to talk to a consumer coordinator and send heartbeats. And basically, these two processes, the pull of the brokers and the heartbeat to another broker, is separate. And so that allows the brokers to check whether or not the consumers are alive or not. And so basically, the heartbeat, when a consumer stops beating, then the consumer's coordinator, which is an active broker, says it looks like a consumer went down and we should do a rebalance. So to avoid issues, basically, and making sure that these two threads are correctly functioning, it is super encouraged to process data fast and pull often. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of rebalances. Now let's go and do a deep dive into each of these mechanisms. For the heartbeat thread, which is something you don't have to do, it happens automatically for you. Basically, when a consumer connects to Kafka, it says, if you haven't heard from me in 10 seconds, then disconnect. And so basically, the broker will wait for heartbeats, and if it doesn't see a heartbeat within 10 seconds, then the consumer is considered dead. If you want to faster rebalance, so if you think that your consumers don't rebalance fast enough, then you should set the session timeout to something slightly lower. But then there's also the heartbeat interval millisecond, and the default is 3 seconds. And basically that says how often you should send heartbeats. And so the general guideline is to set this to 1/3 of session timeout millisecond. So if you set session timeout millisecond to 6 seconds, then heartbeat interval millisecond should be set to 2 seconds. Overall, this mechanism is used to detect if a consumer application is being down, and I would not change any default right now if I were you, but just know about it if you observe issues in the future. Now for the pull thread, there's one big setting, which is max pull interval millisecond. By default, it's 5 minutes. And it's basically a maximum amount between 2 pull calls before declaring the consumer dead. And this is really, really relevant when you have a big data framework such as Spark, because if your processing takes more than 5 minutes before you do another pull request, then Kafka will think your application is actually hung up and not working well. And so it will kill your consumer and say you're not part of the group. So the takeaway is, if you use a big data processing or if your data processing takes a really long time, then you maybe should change the max pull interval millisecond, or even better, make the processing faster and smaller. So I hope that helps. This is just a very high level overview of an advanced concept for consumers, but to me, it's really well needed for people to understand how they work. So I hope that helps, and I will see you in the next lecture.